All right, welcome to Data Hurls. My name is Michael Burke.
And I'm Chris Detzel.
And today we're going to talk about data.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that, aren't you?
Absolutely.
All right, welcome to another Data Hurdles. I'm Chris Detzel, and
I'm Michael Burke. How you doing, Chris?
Pretty good, man. How about you?
I'm doing good, man. My run today was tough. Went out for another 2.5 miles. Did it indoors today because outside is just rainy and in the high 70s right now. Not a fun place to be running. I got ready, walked outside like it was like in the movies. I opened my garage. I get blasted with that humidity, and I was just like, no way.
Yeah.
I'm going back inside. This is awful.
Well, I'm in Dallas, and I did almost a 4-mile run today. And when I went out, it was probably like at 9 a.m. or so, 9:30, and it was already really hot. I think it was 85 degrees and super humid and nasty. And so I was like, I can't get 6 in, and so I got 4 in. So we'll see what happens tomorrow.
That humidity, if we have that during our half, we're going to be so screwed. But you see us both like taking the...
No, by the way, we won't. It's going to be in Utah, and so there's not going to be much humidity there.
That's true.
And
That's
it's just
true.
going to be, breathing is just going to be hard, because we'll have a little bit of what do you call it? I don't know, but whatever. Today, I'm really excited about today. It's something that you and I have been talking about for the last week or two. And the topic today is around AI strategy. And, you and I talk to a lot of leaders within, whether it's IT, within data, and things like that. And what we've learned is, and you could talk a little bit about this, is that, there's a lot of cool things out there around AI and a lot of things that, people just want to go after. But what we're not hearing is a good strategy around AI. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about that today and what that sort of looks like. We'll probably go into 3 different parts. One is today's the high level, and then we'll kind of look at the business of AI strategy, and then maybe even the tech of AI strategy in some episodes later down the road. What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I think that I get this question all the time when I'm at conferences is, where do I start? How do I set up an AI strategy? And right now, in particular, with generative AI, everybody seems to be focused on using generative AI, right? And so we're going to dive into this, but I think that what you'll get from me and what you're going to get out of these talks, especially on the business side, is that AI is a tool first and foremost, right? And we have to be, as leaders, thinking about the problems and thinking about how to solve problems differently. So I hope that in this podcast, we're going to go a little bit deeper into how does that methodology work and what are some of the things that you should be thinking about as you're developing those problem statements and working through them.
Okay, yeah. And so as we kind of think about that, how would you define the importance of having an AI strategy for business today?
Yeah, I mean, this question always gets me a little bit. I think it used to be more important, right? But nowadays, if you don't have an AI strategy, your business is probably at risk, right? I mean, there are far and few organizations out there that I would say probably don't need to be thinking about AI right now. Everybody should be investing in an AI strategy and thinking about things like efficiencies or operational gains or the competitive landscape that they play in. And having an AI strategy enables you to really harness the power of data to automate processes and make more informed decisions and deliver personalized experiences. And when you think about how the world has changed over the course of the past 10 years, that's now become an expectation, right?
Yeah. What are some key considerations companies should keep in mind when they formulate this strategy, AI strategy?
So we talked about this just a moment ago, but tools are not the solution, right? And generative AI is not a solution. It is a tool. I think that AI is getting smarter, so it's starting to feel like these things could be solutions, but they still are tools.
Yeah.
And so overall, when you're starting out, you need to clearly define business objectives and align them with AI initiatives to your overall strategic goals. You should understand the organization's current capabilities, right? Do you have a culture and the talent available to embark on this grand AI strategy that you're thinking about? Do you have the right data available? And do you have the right technology infrastructure, right? Are you on the cloud? Are you on-prem? Do you need to upgrade software or hardware in order to develop an AI strategy? And then finally, considering things like ethical implications, right? Does your AI strategy have any concerns around privacy, legal or compliance issues, right? We saw this especially earlier in early AI development of potential bias, right? And there was some great documents that came out years ago now around providing loans, right? And what would be seemingly a really good thing that could help optimize process and efficiencies in one area could unintentionally be causing a lot of harm in other areas. So I just think being completely aware and having the right experts and acting with the right transparency really will help. And we can dive into that a little further later in the talk too.
Yeah, one of the things I was thinking about is, and I was reading some of this, is look, you should have an overarching business strategy already. How do you intertwine your AI strategy into that already existing business strategy? You shouldn't just change everything, right?
Right.
And so I think that's key is because everybody's just kind of running around with their heads cut off like chickens, right? It's like, oh my God, what do I do? Oh my God, you know what I mean? And so I don't think we should do that. We definitely should kind of go back to the existing strategy that you have as a business and think about how AI can be incorporated into that overarching business strategy is my thinking there. So
totally. I mean, the last conference I was at, there was 20 people in a room, right? And I said, how many people are going to their board and asking for more resources and funding right now? Everybody in the room raised their hand. And I was like, how many of you have a clearly defined AI strategy which you'd like to share today or talk about? One person raised their hand, right? And this is so common. And these are some of the smartest people in the world, right, at these conferences. These were all CDOs. Yeah. And when you think about that, you realize that introducing change like this in a broad way really has to align with your business initiatives, exactly like what you're saying. And if it doesn't, creating that strategy and changing the way people think is going to be extremely difficult. So you really have to know, as you dive into this, is your company ready to have an AI strategy? And at what scale and positioning do you want to dive into this?
Yeah, I agree. How can companies identify like some of the specific areas within their operations that can benefit from AI implementation?
When I'm thinking about AI and kind of how we can develop benefits across the organization, I really look at three main areas typically. Features or things that you can build to improve an experience, whether it's for a customer or internally, whatever your deliverable is that you're producing, how can you enhance it? Enablements, which is really how can you enable AI to be either appended or brought into your product. And you can think about in the large enterprise space, enabling other partners or vendors to integrate into you. Or if you're in the consumer space, it might be purchasing a tool. And then the third one is around efficiencies. How can you take what you're already doing and doing it better, faster, more accurately? How can you improve some of those benchmarks or KPIs that you've already set with an added boost of AI? When you're diving into kind of thinking about these three areas, some of the places that you'd want to focus are thinking about things like processes with repetitive tasks or really data-intensive workflows, or areas where you think that there is a high degree of optimization. And a great example of this is some of the work that's being done right now with artificial intelligence and even generative AI assessing legal contracts, where previously we had fleets of people who were evaluating, searching, going through cases. And if you can apply generative AI as kind of a first line of defense to go through and search for specific keywords or situations or people, that's going to significantly improve or optimize a problem that typically was very costly. And then also, thinking about identifying pain points or bottlenecks or areas where, there are just, things that do require a high degree of expertise or maintenance or routine. And you can seek, if you're looking to kind of uncover these areas of your business, and so say you are a CIO or a CDO and it might be difficult to see that level of granularity, go reach out to your domain experts, your employees, the people who are on the front line building these things, or customer facing employees, and start to ask questions to help identify these types, looking at things like repetition or data intensive flows, or high potential areas of optimization.
Yeah, that's good. And so let's get into the meat of this. So what role does data play in developing an effective AI strategy, and how should an organization approach the data management piece of it?
CIOs, CTOs say, well, we have the data, we just don't know how to use it. Data, we always use terms like data is the fuel of our AI systems, it's the fuel of driving your business initiatives. For a lot of people, that still means like, oh, we just have to collect the data. And really, organizations need to do so more to get to the point where they can implement an AI strategy. They have organized, structured, refined and governed information that is well-documented and that people understand. And I think only really then, when you have that kind of control over your information, can you start to think about implementing AI on top of that to drive automation with your data. Everyone uses this term garbage in, garbage out, right? But the reason is that it's really about maintenance and ownership of this information, and really an understanding of it to be able to figure out what you can do, what is the potential of that. And so organizations that have that strong foundation, that backbone of high quality data, they're able to move much faster with implementing an AI strategy because they already have that understanding of what's available to them and what they would need to answer these challenging questions.
Seems complex to start.
And I think that you can start small, right? You don't have to have it for the entire organization. As an example, if you're trying to optimize a process on your website, you want users to, click on a button or buy a product, as a very simple example, you need to understand how your customers are interacting with your existing site. And if you don't have that data, there is nothing that you can train any kind of machine learning or artificial intelligence to be able to optimize that process. If you're doing large language models and you're doing prompt engineering, you need to have really good questions and answers to help tune the model on where and how it should be responding back to a customer when generating a response. So it is just, you don't have to be an expert across every facet of your need, but specifically, if you've identified a problem point, you need to, at the very least, at first, make sure you're collecting the right data to answer that question.
Okay, all right. Obviously. Are there any ethical or legal implications that companies need to be mindful of when deploying AI solutions?
So we talked a bit about addressing the potential bias, fairness, transparency of algorithms. This is becoming more and more important as we evolve as a society, as regulation catches up to how companies are using data. Being able to comply and be in compliance is something that's becoming more and more complicated with privacy laws, with handling sensitive data, right? These are challenging times. And so as a small organization, it's really difficult to get up and running and make sure that you are acting responsibly and acting with the right fairness, transparency when you implement these algorithms. So there are tons of really good resources out there if you don't already have this kind of expert counsel on your team. If you do, please leverage them, bring them into the conversation from day one on how you're developing products using artificial intelligence. And that will, definitely help prevent any kind of catastrophic or major incidences in the future as you start to implement and test out these ideas and prototypes.
It's a good point. And, I think as a business that is starting to not just implement AI, but AI technologies, you've got to do your due diligence to the company that you're trying to implement and making sure they're, I think there's all kinds of risks and security kind of things. And so, my advice is you have to do your due diligence. Don't just assume that company, that AI company, or that has all this AI inside of it has done all their due diligence, because people are just going fast right now, and companies are just trying to implement, not just implement, but just build products that are going to do some AI type stuff. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense, but next question.
Yeah.
So how can companies ensure the successful integration of AI technologies with their existing workflows and systems?
So again, it's about identifying these integration points for AI, right? If you are in the cloud, if you are operating AWS or Google, you have a lot more opportunity to implement AI quickly and efficiently. If you're a manufacturing company working with machinery from the 70s or the 60s, you're going to have to get a lot more creative on what are those integration points. Maybe it's purchasing sensors or additional equipment or something within your manufacturing process. I would say also, providing training on how to integrate, maintain, and manage these types of integrations is going to be a huge piece to that. And also collaborating with any kind of IT or technical teams to ensure that you have compatibility, scalability, and security in these solutions, right? At the end of the day, this data that's being collected and processed for these models is of the utmost importance. It should be considered something that is proprietary, sensitive to your business, and typically is making or should be making a sizable business impact on your proper organization. So you really want to make sure that you have the proper protection and scalability baked in at an enterprise grade product.
Yeah, it makes sense. What are some potential challenges or barriers that organizations might face when they actually implement AI, and how can they overcome them?
Right. So I think the first one is a lack of talent. There's so many teams out there right now that are like, we have to invest in generative AI. We have no data scientists, right? We don't have a team of data stewards that understand our data. We don't have data engineers or a legal team, or we don't have all these components that are required. And a lot of times with people who don't understand the technical aspects of this, they're thinking, I can just jump right to implementing machine learning and AI. And the truth is that there are a lot of levels of infrastructure and complexities that need to be sought out before you jump into implementing or even investing in AI. I think the other big piece is data quality and accessibility, right? Data doesn't necessarily even just need to be accessible. It needs to be of high quality, right? So do you have the proper management strategies and data partnerships to really answer the questions or the KPIs that you've set out to go after? And then the biggest one, and probably the most difficult to change, is really this idea of culture and a resistance to change, right? How can you, as a technology leader, communicate the benefits and provide the proper education and involve employees who might be skeptical in this process to change a culture? I've been through a couple culture changes in my career trying to buck up against what was the norm. It is an incredibly challenging process, right? You've got naysayers at every angle coming at you with different ways to break down or deteriorate a project that you're trying to invest into. It's incredibly difficult. So, if you're just starting out, one of the best things that I would recommend is find an area where you have passionate people who want to adopt a new technology or want to try to do something differently. If you don't have that, it's going to be an uphill battle from day one, and it'll be incredibly difficult.
And I think communicating that vision consistently, constantly, and as much as possible is the key. So having a good vision, having good leadership, all those things are going to be important when you go through this change.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're not leading the data team, or if you aren't a CTO or CDO, getting buy-in from those executive stakeholders always helps, right? If you're a director or a manager and you want to drive change within your organization, find that executive sponsorship and help drive change upwards.
I want to touch on something that you mentioned is lack of talent and expertise. I kind of think there's going to be a lot of that right now. And so can you touch upon what kind of talent is needed? And maybe that's a whole podcast in itself. I don't know.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of talk right now. The market as a whole is kind of saturated with people from all areas and all walks of life becoming data scientists. And that's okay. But that also means that kind of the talent pool that was here 10 years ago is diluted quite a bit. I would say when you're looking to build out a team, if you don't have a team already, think about what assets you do have available to you. If you don't have a data strategy in general, you need to develop that first, right? So that's talking about hiring data engineers, data stewards, possibly even people to help run reporting, BI analysts. And then once you have that under your belt and you feel like you have a solid data strategy, you can start thinking about, okay, how do I now move forward? I have governance, I have transparency, I have quality. How do I move forward and invest in AI and bring on that data scientist? If you do that out of order, you're very likely going to hire a data scientist who's going to get very little done in their job there.
Yeah.
Because they're going to spend most of their time doing what the data stewards and the data engineers should have been doing for probably about 6 to 12 months before you started doing machine learning within their first year to 2 of work.
Such good advice. Now, here's a tough one, and it's always a tough kind of thing on how can business measure success of ROI for their AI initiatives. What do you think?
Yeah. So this is a tough one because obviously it's very company specific. But when you're thinking about a target that you need to measure, just make sure it's clear and it's simple to start out with, right? Find something that's really aligned with the business objectives, and I'll give you an example in a minute. But track these performance indicators and focus on how they relate to the challenge or the vision that you're trying to solve with artificial intelligence, and conduct regular evaluations of this. Constantly compare it against baselines or industry benchmarks if you have them available, and start to understand what is the standard run rate that your company operates at for that specific KPI, and then on top of that, how much is AI changing that? And if you can measure those two variables, you start to tell a really good story. And if there's one thing I've learned in being in a complicated space like artificial intelligence, is that you need to simplify everything and tell a very clear and concise story to everyone around you to get them to understand, buy in, invest in this life cycle. And if you don't, you're going to just get lost in the technical weeds with everyone. So, some great examples of that are if you're trying to do something around cost savings, right? What is the dollar amount as an example? Or, if it's time, what is the time saved? If you're looking at a productivity improvement, what is that? Is it time to value, right? Is it revenue? Is it reducing your CAC? Pick a metric, focus on it, and then start to build. Once you have that metric and you've started tracking that at a high level, start to understand, well, what are all the other supporting metrics underneath that you need to really answer that question thoroughly and confidently within your organization. And as you spin off more projects, how do those projects and what can you track within those projects that rolls up to answer that major KPI? And how does it contribute to helping with that KPI? I think that lineage of a story, right? You created something that produced customized advertisements within your organization to drive traffic to your website. Well, how much traffic do those customizable ads drive compared to the ones that the marketing team was creating manually, right? You have to have that kind of comparison story to be able to show improvement with artificial intelligence. And at any point that you can do that, you drive a stronger story that allow you to drive more investment and ultimately continue to grow and beef up the quality and size of your team to do more.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what those metrics look like in the future and how people are tracking this kind of stuff. And I mean, you mentioned some really good ones, but those are hard to do. So
it's incredibly hard to do. And I'd say as a leader, that takes a ton of time, right? Time and energy and so much more than I think most people realize. But if you don't have that foundation of properly tracking a KPI, you've got nothing, because then you just have an idea that you're implementing.
No, I agree with you. I mean, but I think that's important. What do you think are some common misconceptions or myths about an AI strategy, and how do you think they can be debunked?
Oh, there's so many fun ones right now, like AI replacing humans, right? I mean, these things we've heard these in sci-fi films for years, and although it is kind of exciting and interesting to think about what the future will hold for us in 100 years or 50 years, and I just feel like that is not going to happen, right? Like, we have regulators, we have governance, we have laws for reasons, and that is to help control the safety and growth of us as humans. I don't think that we are going to have any kind of AI replacing humans, at least not likely in my lifetime. ultimately anything that you're doing with artificial intelligence or machine learning, right, it's really meant to augment human capabilities. It's meant to drive more value, make humans more efficient, make them better at what they're doing. And sure, in some areas, you'll start to see AI kind of replace roles that probably could be automated better by machines. But it doesn't mean that we're going to replace humans, and human talent will be repurposed for other areas to drive efficiency and
Agreed.
productivity.
Agreed.
Another one that I love is like that AI is just this silver bullet, right? AI is just you implement it and it's just going to change everything in your business. And you hear this a lot from people who don't understand the technology or who read too many, news articles on ChatGPT. It requires a lot of skill, structure, discipline to your business, to your data. Success relies on this proper implementation and alignment of your business goals, and it also requires investing in a lot of skilled people. So if you don't have all of these things in tandem, you don't have AI, and you will not have a silver bullet. And any company that looks like they have a silver bullet, and you think of the Amazons and Netflix of the world, right? They're investing hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars to get to these kind of futuristic states. And it's really easy to get lost in thinking the AI is just doing that without all of these experts underneath fine-tuning every piece of those systems. And then
Great.
I think the final one and this is a kind of an interesting side, I think I've told you guys this before, but my wife works in the manufacturing space. I have a bunch of friends in completely different areas than the tech world that you and I work in, Chris. And I think that one thing that's almost disheartening and starting to change now is that, AI is only for tech companies, right? AI can be beneficial for every organization. And I would say now more than ever, these industries that typically didn't invest in AI are primed to have AI in like smart startups take over, right? Because the ways in which they can accelerate business and drive, speed and efficiencies is unprecedented, and people aren't investing in those areas. So, you're starting to see this across so many different industries now, whether it's manufacturing or agriculture or financial services, where these smaller startups are just taking sizable chunks of business away from these behemoth organizations that haven't been able to adapt fast enough or invest quickly enough to change that culture in which they've been working for the past 100 years.
Yeah. Well, it's always challenging to bring change to any culture that's been around for that long. And so bringing in AI, not to say they won't, but it's also going to be a challenge. That's just the way those organizations work, So can you provide, and I think we're going to sum this up here in a bit, but provide some examples of, companies that have successfully implemented AI strategies and maybe even some of the benefits that they have achieved.
So I think some good examples that we'll start off with, we'll do a couple big tech ones and then we'll dive into some others, is like, you think of the Amazons of the world, right? When you think of what is Amazon, and I'm talking now about the e-commerce site, what is their purpose? You could say, well, it's to sell you stuff, right? But it's not just to sell you things. It's to sell you things that you need or want or are looking for. And so one of the ways that you can help do that for a consumer is by providing things like recommendation systems, right? And if you ever go on Amazon, you start searching for something, all of a sudden you just get presented with like hundreds of similar products. And, they're recommending things are popping up, and sometimes I feel like I go on there to buy something and I find 3 other things that I need, right? And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is completely debatable, and we could go into probably a whole nother podcast about kind of, the life expectancy of things like recommendation engines. But, at the end of the day, I've bought something that I wanted, and Amazon presented me with an array of products that I wanted faster and more efficiently than any other company. I've got it delivered to my house in 2 days. And I could drive down to the hardware store to pick up, the specific screw that I need, or I could sit in the comfort of my home, order it on Amazon, and have it in 24 to 48 hours, right? Like, that is incredible. And you think about the ease of use and the accessibility that provides to getting niche products across the entire country. It's huge. Now, there's the trade-off that, you're taking away from small businesses and all of these other organizations around you that you should be purchasing from. But that's not here or there.
And they've been doing this for years, by the way.
Systems. Yeah, years.
They've been doing this for a long time. This is not something new, and they're doing it all through AI powered recommendation system stuff. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy because you can get on Amazon, buy something, and they'll say most people also buy this with this. You know what I mean? So.
Yep. Another good example is how many of you have cars that have been produced within the last 5 to 10 years. You probably have emergency brake systems, right? Mm-hmm. A huge implementation and an incredibly valuable feature that's life-saving. And I don't know about you, Chris, but I've had it happen a few times where I was driving in the highway, all of a sudden there was some traffic that came up unexpectedly, and my brakes automatically slowed my car down, right? Without me having to slam on the brakes. And you just look at technology like that and you think, how much of an impact has this made on making the world a safer place? Right? That's driven by artificial intelligence. That's driven by these proximity sensors, realizing that you're approaching a stationary object too quickly and taking an action for you faster possibly than you could. And so you think about these areas where what is the job of an auto manufacturer? And for the companies that pioneered this technology, it was, well, we want to make the safest vehicles possible. And so they invented a sensor in a way to sense objects around you that could provide a threat. And they automated the process of protecting you, right? Thinking that your reactions might not always be present or aware of the things changing in your environment. And you think of today how that's even been accentuated by companies like Tesla, as an example, where you've got autonomous driving, right? Capabilities that are going to help keep you in between the lanes and detect cars around you or people around you or objects of risk, and not only just slow you down, but also steer around them, right? It's a whole nother world where you could debate ins and outs of whether autonomous vehicles are a good thing or a bad thing, but at the end of the day, they're helping provide a safer and more enjoyable experience for the consumer, and that's going to drive value for anybody who's sitting in front of a car. So, those are a couple examples. There are, millions upon millions that we could dive into, but I hope that this was beneficial for those that are listening today. I think that we are in future and subsequent episodes going to dive into a lot more details on the technical capabilities. What do you need from a actual feature? What kind of tools should you be using? And maybe we'll even walk through a couple of really good examples of how we can get started there. And then also from a business side, what does strategy really mean? How do you articulate that to your business stakeholders? And how do you create those stories that really drive value within your organization? So Chris, unless there's anything else, thank you so much. This was a good one. I'm really happy that you got me to do this, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I appreciate it, Michael, and I know our audience will like this a lot. So thank you for tuning in to another Data Hurdles. Please rate and review us. I'm Chris Detzel, and
I'm Michael Burke. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.